Hey everyone, welcome back to another video from A Man Talks FPL SC. In today's video, we're going through NRL SuperCoach round 22, going through who the best buys are for this week and a general preview of the round. Starting to wind down the season, which also means we're winding down in our trades. But if you guys enjoyed the video, really appreciate a subscription to the channel. Thank you so much. We just crossed 1,000 subscribers just earlier this week, so I'm really appreciative of all the support so far, and hopefully we can continue that throughout the end of the SuperCoach season. And for any new viewers who are looking at my fantasy Premier League content, that will be continuing throughout the new season as well. But let's get into the video. So we can't only talk about the good times, we have to bring up the bad times, and last round was not good for me. 1,020 points, it was an absolute stinker. Just had plenty of players scoring like 20s and 30s and 40s. There was no real big captaincy scores last week either. And so I've seen my rank drop by like 1.5k spots, down to 4,600, which is not awful, but yeah, I'm starting to slip. This is the lowest rank I've been all season. I'm doing probably the season in the opposite direction after starting in the top 1,000, but this is just the way it's going. I've got 2 trades still up my sleeve, so hopefully that does put me over the edge over a lot of teams that are missing trades or, is missing players, but yeah, not going great at the moment, but we've got 4 rounds to hopefully make up the difference. My aim is to still try to get into the top 2 or 1%. If we can somehow manage a top 1,000 finish, that would be pretty encouraging. But I think the main way to do that will be through chasing point of difference players. So I think the biggest topic of discussion is obviously Angus Crichton's suspension for 3 weeks, which I thought personally, as a Roosters fan, was a little bit unfair, but he had carryover points and they just took the early guilty plea. But he's going to be out for 3 games now. He's only going to be available in round 25, which is the last round of the season. So it really is a call in terms of your team position, whether you hold or you trade him. If you've got the coverage, you can obviously keep him on up until round 25, but he's like 600k, and so I think there's a lot of money that you can unlock. So I think if you have got the trades, I think it's probably worthwhile using it, because you want to be making up the points that you're missing from Crichton, because he normally gives around 75 a game. So I've highlighted here 5 second forward options who I think are the best replacements for him: Tyson Frizell, Cam Murray, Ryan Madison, Luciano Leilua, and Victor Radley. In my opinion, hands down, Cam Murray is the best replacement for Angus Crichton. He is the most popular trade and replacement for Angus Crichton as well. He's just been on an absolute tear. He's got a 3-round average of 99, and I'm fairly certain his 5-round average is 95. So he's been doing it for a long time now. The Rabbitohs attack is clicking, and he's looking on form as well, able to get attacking stats. The Rabbitohs draw is a bit up and down. They've got games against the Panthers and the Roosters, but they also have 2 games against the Titans and the Dragons. As a middle forward, Murray's down scores are not going to be that bad. You're still going to be getting like 50 or 60 in work rate, but in those 2 easy games, his attacking upside is right up there, and he's able to get these 100+ scores. So he is a bit expensive at 668k, but in my opinion, he is the best replacement if you're looking for an Angus Crichton replacement. If you're looking to go a little bit more budget, I think 2 other good options is Tyson Frizell and Luciano Leilua. So Leilua had like a 100+ score last round. I have mentioned him a couple of times on the channel as a bit of a point of difference. Tigers' draw for the rest of the season is still pretty solid. They've got 1 tough game against the Panthers. He's looked really good in the past few weeks, lots of tackle breaking, lots of good runs, so I really like him. He loves to offload as well, so it really helps him get those SuperCoach points. And I think he's a safe bet for about 65 to 70 a week. And we saw the upside that he can produce last week when he scored that big 100-point score. Frizell is actually someone I brought in last week myself at 480k, and with the Knights draw for the rest of the season, I thought he was a good pickup. He scored around 62, which wasn't great, but he's not going to give you these bad scores either. The main reason I also brought him in was Price, and also the return of Mitch Pearce I thought was going to help the Knights attack. And he did look threatening himself. He did get a line break in that game, so I thought Frizell was a decent pickup. And so I think if you're looking for a more budget replacement, a bit more of a point of difference as well, if you're chasing if you're looking for differentiating players, I think Frizell is also a good option. Madison is a bit more of your safer pick, but the Eels, that doesn't look like they're going to be getting a lot of attacking points anytime soon, given the tough draw they've got for the rest of the season. So Madison, I think, is going to give you 65 to 70 pretty solid, but he's not going to give you these high upside scores in my opinion. So I think I would prefer Leilua, Murray, and Tyson Frizell. I've also got Victor Radley here if you're looking for maybe a dual flexible player, because he's posted some pretty good scores recently. He's got a 3-round average of 72, and at 485k, again, offers good value if, say, you're looking to create some money from this trade of Angus Crichton. So I really like Radley. He should be playing bigger minutes as well, with Jared Rio-Hargreaves getting a rest. So I really like Radley. In the games that he's played over 60 minutes this season, he's posted really, really good scores. And the Roosters' draw for the rest of the season is very, very good. And we know that he can get those attacking stats. So I don't actually mind Radley. That dual hooker flexibility can work really handy down the line if you do also own like a Brandon Smith. That might be really beneficial for your team setup. So these are the 5 best options. You've also got other players like Josh Curran, who's posted a big 100-point score last week as well. He's also someone you can consider, but I think plain and simple, Cam Murray is probably my preferred choice. So I also wanted to discuss some potential centre wing options. If you are looking to trade out Crichton and you've got the right duels, you can switch to a centre wing, and the centre wing we've seen has got very high upside so far this season. So I think if you are in that category of looking to chase higher upside, chasing ranks like someone like me, I think going for a centre wing, if you've got enough second row forward depth, can be a really good strategy to end the season. And the 4 guys that I've got here, though, I think probably the best options to consider are probably Euan Aitken, Val Holmes, Corey Thompson, and Bradman Best. Euan Aitken has been a revelation since he's moved into the Warriors back row. Scores of 128 and 89. He did obviously get tries in each of those 2 games, but the Warriors draw is very, very good. They put the Bulldogs this week, so I think he will be able to get those attacking stats for sure. And his base has been really solid. You can see there his base and power statistics, 74 in his first game in the back row, and then 52. So if he keeps continuing to play in the back row, he's not going to give you these horrible low scores, but the upside is definitely there. We've seen that in the past 2 games. So I don't mind Euan Aitken as a real strong point of difference player, because the Warriors draw is really good for the rest of the season. Val Holmes is probably my preference if you are looking for a centre wing with high upside, because he's goal kicking. Cowboys draw is not too bad. You've got the Tigers, Parramatta, St. George, and Manly. Manly and Parramatta are a little bit tougher, but St. George and the Tigers, you can definitely see points on offer there for Val Holmes. But even in the tougher games so far this season, Holmes has been able to put up good scores. You've got a 63 against the Roosters and 138 against the Knights just after that as well, when he was on an absolute tear pre-Origin. Maybe some slight concern over he's just coming back from injury, but I think if you are looking to get him in, this week has to be the week, because he's versing the Tigers, and I think that's a juicy matchup that you'd want him for. And so I really like Val Holmes as a buy at centre wing, and I'd probably prefer him over Euan Aitken just for the safety. Corey Thompson has been doing pretty solid over the past few weeks with 53, 62, and 48 in the past 3 weeks. The Titans do come into a bit of a tougher matchup in the next fortnight with the Rabbitohs and then the Storm, but if you're looking for someone that, say, in the very last 2 weeks, just as a real flyer, Newcastle and then the Warriors in the final 2 games of the season, he could offer some strong point of difference high upside. So that's someone to also factor in. Bradman Best, I was very hot on him last week after his big 107-point game against the Raiders. He only scored 27 against the Broncos, and he did also pick up some shoulder concern. So I still think he's an okay buy. He's fairly cheap, still at around, I think, sub 400k. Obviously, you might be a bit put off by that 27, but you can't question that Knights draw for the rest of the season. And so I think Bradman Best, if you've got the depth, you can cover him, if he does eventually go down. So I really don't mind Bradman Best as a bit of a flyer as well, a point of difference. That's a bit of a theme across these 4 centre wings. If I had to rank them, I'd probably go Holmes, Aitken, Thompson, and Best. And personally, Val Holmes is definitely someone I'm looking to bring in myself this week. Now we'll quickly touch on the fullbacks, because I think Clint Gutherson is a very strong sell given the Eels' tough draw, and he hasn't done that well in the last 2 weeks against the tougher matchups, and he's shown that so far this season. So he's very good against weak opposition, but when it comes against the top teams, he's not able to produce those high scores. I think the 3 best candidates to replace Gutho with are Pappenhausen, Ponga, and Tedesco. If I had to rank them, I would actually go Tedesco number 1, Ponga number 2, and Pappenhausen number 3, although that Pappenhausen ranking is dependent on him still coming off the bench. If he eventually does get his starting spot this week, fortunately the Storm do play the first game of the round, so we will know that starting lineup on Thursday evening. If Pappenhausen is starting from fullback position and goal kicking, I think he probably jumps up to the number 1 prospect, because his 470k is ridiculously cheap. Tedesco is a little bit more expensive. He scored 92 last week with only, I think, the 1 try assist. So he's getting back to that Tedesco of 2020, where he was just getting points for fun. And with the Broncos this week, who are the worst team at defending fullbacks, you can see a big score on offer here for Tedesco. And then that's followed by the Dragons, the Rabbitohs, and the Raiders. So it's not a bad draw for the Roosters. So I really like Tedesco. Ponga has got a very good draw, as I've spoken about a lot on this channel. Sharks, Bulldogs, Titans, and Broncos. He scored 71 last week. I think without their goal kicking, his ceiling is a little bit lower than Pappenhausen and Tedesco, but he's also a lot more budget compared to Tedesco. So I still like him really strongly as a buy for Gutherson, and Pappenhausen we've just discussed. There are some other options you can go for, like Latrell, Adam Dewey, Reece Walsh. Reece Walsh did have a good game last week, scoring 101, and that Warriors draw, you can't deny it. So if you're looking for a point of difference, you could go for Reece Walsh. Latrell, I'm a little bit put off by that Panthers and Roosters matchup, so I think I wouldn't go for him. And Adam Dewey, I think he's pretty expensive now. I think he's over 700k. So for that reason, I think if you're looking to get someone in the actual fullback spot, I would be leaning towards Pappenhausen, Ponga, or Tedesco, and probably go Tedesco number 1, Pappenhausen number 2 or 3, but it really depends on if he's named at the starting spot this week. Now we'll do a quick run through of the top trade-ins and the trade-outs just to see if I agree with them, or if there's things that we can discuss there. If we look at the trade-outs on the left, a lot of that is injury dependent, like Angus Crichton suspended for 3 games, Reid Marnie really sad that he's actually out for the rest of the season, Brian To'o injury, Dane Laurie injury, Jason Taumalolo's actually fractured his hand again. That's like the 3rd time this season. Ben Hunt is an injury. Nico Hines as the 3rd most traded out is interesting because he's still been named to start in the initial team list, but obviously with Pappenhausen on the bench, they're sharing minutes, and you're not going to see, I think, these big scores out of Hines when he's only playing like 45 minutes a game. The reason I'd be still keen to hold on to him is that he's still an active player, and I think a lot of people are looking at really thin squads at this point in time, and I expect the Storm to still rest some of their players in the last couple of rounds, and for that I'm hopeful that Hines is able to actually come in and either play maybe the full game at halfback, 5'8", or even fullback in the latter stages of the season, and then we know that he's a fantastic option. So for that reason I am looking to continue to hold him. Obviously you can unlock a lot of money out of trading Hines, so I think if you've got the trades and the depth, it makes sense to me to trade Hines, but in my current situation I think I'm going to be holding. Clint Gutherson we just discussed, I think he's okay to sell, but again he falls into this category of an active player who does still provide some points, so I think if depending on how strong your depth is in your team, he could be a hold, but I think all other things equal, he probably is a sell in my eyes. CHN as the 7th most traded out, again named on the bench. He might be recalled back to the starting lineup. We'll see that on Thursday evening, but it's a tough matchup against the Storm, and again he only scored like 28 points last week off the bench, which is really not what we want. I don't think he's a play in your 17s. I've got him in my team at the moment. I'm not looking to play him in the 17, but I'm still looking to hold him just for some added depth. And I think if you've avoided the Angus Crichton kind of issue, you can easily trade CHN to one of those other second row forwards that we discussed, because I think unless he's starting, he's not going to be a valid option for us. In terms of the trade-ins, Cam Murray I think is 100% the best second row forward to go for to replace Crichton. Harry Grant I discussed quite a bit last week as the best hooker option to go for. If we quickly look at Damien Cook is actually the 8th most traded in my opinion, I would just be going for Harry Grant over Damien Cook. He's actually 5k cheaper than Damien Cook. His average just speaks for itself. Damien Cook has been really inconsistent so far this season, and the Storm are just looking to pile on the points against anyone, really. So I think Grant, in my opinion, I'd be much preferring to go for over Damien Cook. Even coming off the bench, I think his ceiling is a bit capped, but we know off the bench he can still put out these big 70 to 80 point scores. So for me, fantastic trade-in. Ruben Garrick, 110 points against the Storm, basically shows that he's fixture proof when he's got Tommy Turbo feeding him tries on the wing there. Goal kicking as well, pretty decent base. Yep, at 710k, it's a lot of money to fork out. But apart from this game against the Eels this week, Manly's draw for the rest of the season is really strong. So I think if you are able to go to Ruben Garrick, say trading Nico Hines to Ruben Garrick, I think that makes perfect sense to me. Victor Radley we've discussed a little bit. Joey Manu, 658k. I'm surprised that he's this highly traded in. Yes, he's been posting amazing scores in the past month, and I think anyone who brought him in for round 17 coverage has been really fortunate, because he's been able to play either at fullback or play on the wing. He has been named at centre this week, and I'd probably expect him to stay there with Dale Copley coming on to the wing. And I think when he plays at centre, he's just not that good of a SuperCoach option. I think it's one of those cases where if you have him, you don't buy, but you don't sell. Obviously, you wouldn't be selling him at this point in time, but I wouldn't be going out to buy him, in my opinion. Luciano Leilua and Val Holmes have been discussed previously. Brandon Smith, I'm actually surprised, is actually up there on the trading list, because now that he's sharing that role with Harry Grant, I'm not sure how well he's going to do. And I think there are better options to go for. If you're looking to get a hooker, I'd pay the extra 30k and get Grant. And if you're looking for a second row forward, I'd either just go straight to a Cam Murray, or I'd go for one of those other second row forward options that we discussed previously. Now, captaincy this week is going to be really important, because there's quite a few good matchups that we can target. Melbourne Storm versus the Raiders. If you are looking for a vice captain, you could go for a Harry Grant or a Jerome Hughes. The Raiders have given up quite a few points to hookers previously, third worst in the competition, and we know how potent the Storm attack is, so even Grant off the bench could be a good vice captain option. And Jerome Hughes, we know how solid he is, regularly posts scores in the 70s and 80s, and quite often gets to those 90 and 100 plus scores as well, so they could be good vice captain options. Tedesco is looking like a fantastic vice captain, or even a straight captain this week, coming up against the Broncos, worst team at defending fullbacks. As I mentioned, he scored 92 last week, didn't even look like he did that much, so you'd expect him to be going for like 120 plus in this game. And so I think Tedesco, if you've got him, he could be a really interesting captain proposition. I think Tommy Turbo is probably going to be the most highly captain player again this round, and so obviously if that is the case, you aren't able to use the vice captaincy on Tedesco. So I think it really comes down to whether you think Tedesco versus the Broncos is better than Turbo against the Eels. Last time Turbo played the Eels, he scored like 150 points, and he scored 87 last week against the best team in the comp. So we know Tom is able to get points against anyone, so it is a big bet to go against him. But I think if there's any other player you're willing to do that this week, Tedesco, I think it is the one in my opinion. Cody Walker for me is probably going to be my safest vice captain coming up against the Titans, who actually haven't been too bad at defending opposition halves. You know, they've been the 10th worst at defending 5/8, but we've seen the Rabbitohs attack in the past like 8 weeks basically has been so potent, and Cody Walker has been on an absolute tear. They scored 40 plus points against the Eels last week, who was a pretty good defense, so I expect them to run up a score against the Titans. I'm not really paying too much attention to that stat about the Titans defending halves. I think Walker 90 last week against the Eels, he very easily could go 100 plus here as well, so he's going to be my vice captain pick for sure. Adam Doueihi I don't own, but it could be a great captaincy option against the Bulldogs. Even in games where he doesn't seem like he does much, he's still able to come away with points. 86 last week in a relatively quiet game. We know he's got a big ceiling, scoring 150 a few weeks back against the Broncos, and against the Bulldogs, yeah, I really like Doueihi as a pod captaincy choice this week. Alternatively, if you do have Doueihi in your 5/8, you could also very easily vice captain him and captain Tommy Turbo, who's the next player on the list here. Do we need to say much more about him this season? He's averaging 134. He's getting points against any opposition. For me, probably the standout captain this round. If you're also looking to go different, you could go Kalen Ponga against the Sharks, who have been the 9th worst at defending fullbacks. The reason I'm not as hot on a captaincy on Kalen Ponga is just because of that lack of goal kicking. I just don't think his ceiling is quite there in comparison to a Tedesco or a Tom Trbojevic, or even a Cody Walker for that matter. So for that reason, I don't think Ponga is a fantastic captaincy option. I think it's more of a, say, if you're in a head-to-head play and you're looking for a real upside, point of difference, then you can maybe go for a Ponga. But I think the safest route this week is probably going to be sticking on a Tedesco, a Cody Walker, or a Tom Trbojevic. So we will go through the break-evens, but I don't think there's too much consideration needs to be placed on the break-evens at this point in the season, given that we've only got 4 weeks left, and at this point in time, you're not really looking to wait on players to see if their price goes up and down. I think if you want to get the player in, you just get them irregardless of their break-even. We'll use this as an opportunity just to discuss through other teams and other players, like Payne Haas from the Broncos, still a great front row forward option, but 627k with a break-even of 97. I think that's too much money, in my opinion, now to be paying for a front row forward. I think if you're looking to spend the big money, I would spend the extra like 30-40k and go to a Cam Murray in second row forward instead, who definitely has higher upside in my opinion. The Bulldogs, not really many players I'm looking at here, but Ryan James and Corey Horsburgh from the Raiders have been sent there on loan, so if you are holding on to Ryan James like I am, he has been named at starting prop, so he could be a really handy player if your squad is looking really thin for the rest of the season. From the Raiders, I think Jordan Rapana is the only guy I would be considering because he's been posting really good scores recently playing at fullback. He has been named again there this week. And so I think at 568k still offers good value in the centre wing if you're looking to differentiate from say those other 4 centre wing options I presented earlier. From the Dragons, to be honest, I've got no interest really in any of their players. I would just be assessing Zach Lomax's performance and hopefully we can get him cheap next season. From Manly, I think the main guys that you'd be considering is like a Cherry Evans. I think his break even we can talk about because there's 185 in a game against the Eels. If you are in the market for a halfback not named Nathan Cleary, on the kind of more premium bracket, Cherry Evans, you could wait a week actually this week against the Eels. It is a tougher matchup, and then he could be a lot cheaper and you can pick him up next week because the last 3 games for Manly are really strong. So that could be a tactic that you do if you're looking to go for a Cherry Evans. From the Storm, I think we've discussed quite a few of their players. I mean, Nico Hines, that big break even of 172, is definitely a reason why a lot of people are selling and cashing in on that almost 700k price tag. And you've got Ryan Pappenhausen there at 472k. Again, he's offering so much value. If he gets named at the starting fullback spot, geez, it's going to be really hard to pass him up. The Knights do have interesting players here as well. I mean, Mitch Pearce is not someone I discussed last week when I was talking through halfbacks. He scored like 70 or 80 points last round, to my knowledge, and with a break even of 29 at 476k, look, pretty budget, and I think Knights draw is pretty solid. You may take a punt on a Mitch Pearce if you're looking to really chase some point of difference players. And from the Cowboys, aside from Tamalolo, I think Val Holmes is really the only person that I'd be considering, and definitely looks like someone I'm thinking about bringing in this week myself. From the Eels, I mean, a bit of a shift in their team is that Isaiah Papali'i has been named at the starting prop position this round, but given that he's so highly owned, I don't think it's going to make too much of a bearing on our SuperCoach teams. Yeah, Clint Gutherson with 115 break even, he could start to still slide in cash, so I think if you are able to trade him out this week, it's a good week to do so. From the Panthers, Matt Burton has just been the gift that keeps on giving for anyone who's held on to him, scoring a massive 134 last week. Look, I wouldn't be actively going out and buying him in my opinion, but with the minus 15 break even, if you're looking for a quick buck and someone maybe you can carry for the rest of the season, he's not too badly priced, so you could go there in my opinion. And Cleary, to be honest, I'm kind of cold on Nathan Cleary. He has been named on the extended bench again. If he misses this week, in my opinion, I think there's just too much risk in trying to bring him back in with such a small window of games for him to play and that high price tag. I think you're better off going with other options. From the Sharks, I mean, you've got Jesse Raymond still posting some decent scores. I think he posted 60 plus last week, not really doing much. But I think if you are looking for center wings, I think you want to go for the ones who've got that really high upside, and in my opinion, Raymond doesn't fall into that category. From the Rabbitohs, Josh Mansour scored 171 last week. God damn it, that should have been Alex Johnson, but he's out on the sidelines, who should be back next week though. So if you are holding on to Alex Johnson, I think wait out one more week and you should get him back next round. But anyone who went on Mansour has obviously been blessed with a massive point score from last week and a -25 break even, so he'll shoot up in value as well. Other good options from the Rabbitohs in the centre wing is like Dane Gagai, who did very well last week as well. He's fairly priced at 580k. Personally though, I think I'd be going for Val Holmes, who's a little bit lower owned, and in my opinion probably possesses a little bit higher of the ceiling given that he's goal kicking. Not too many other players I think from the Roosters to be discussing outside of like Tedesco, Radley and Joey Manu, and we've kind of spoken about all those other options. I think maybe for second or forward you could look at Sitili Tupouniua actually. He's priced at 555k. He was playing at centre last week, but he has been named in the starting edge role this week, coming up against the Broncos, who actually do concede quite a few points to edge back rowers. He also could be a sneaky option to go for at second or forward to replace Crichton. From the Titans, honestly, if you are looking for a budget halfback, I've been really impressed with Toby Sexton's performances in the past 3 weeks. He's got a 283k price tag, so again, very much a budget option, but he goal kicks. He's looking pretty decent in attack, but the next 2 games for the Titans are pretty tough, so I think you could wait out on him. You're looking to maybe capitalize on points, but I think there's no other better budget halfback option in my opinion. From the Warriors, obviously you've got Ewan Aiken there with a -40 break even at 481k. If you're looking for a real strong point of difference in centre wing, I think he could be someone to go for. And Josh Curran at 461k, look, has been really good in the past few weeks, and again could be an option as well to consider at second row forward. Finally, from the Tigers, I think not too many players of interest here. You've got Adam Dewey obviously just absolutely killing it. Nofaluma, someone I own and was very high on, but he only scored like 23 points against the Bulldogs last week, which was really disappointing. He has had these kind of games so far this season, so obviously still an okay buy because the Tigers draw isn't too bad. But to be honest, I think the other centre wing options that I mentioned, like I'd probably at this point prefer a Ewan Aiken over a David Nofaluma. Sean Bloor has actually turned out to be really solid for anyone who's held on to him as a potential cash cow. 215k with a starting edge role. He's been playing like decent minutes and also getting scores in the 40s and 50s, so it could be a very handy reserve option this round as well if you're looking thin on numbers. He could also even potentially be a downgrade if you're going from Angus Crichton down to him, generating like 300 plus k. If say you do have a plan to go to a Nathan Cleary, that could be one way to generate some funds to do that. So a quick update on our round 21 group league leader. Luke from Here We Go Again scored a massive 1,471. I really vibe with that team name because round 22 feels like here we go again. Injuries, suspensions. Let's see what round 22 has got in store for us. In terms of the group league top 5, we've got Andrew from Eliminator still in this overall ranking top 10 at 9th. Looking at the rankings, it looks like first place is going to be, he's about 300 points ahead, so it's going to look pretty difficult to chase him down. But Andrew, if you've got any trades left up your sleeve, hopefully you can make a push for that number 1 spot. Following behind him, we've got Jason, James, Marcelo and Matt. They've all been hanging around there for quite a while now. Very solid overall rankings. I'm just hopeful for these guys that they've all got trades up their sleeves. If anyone is still looking to join the group, it's 286239. Alright, that's it guys. That is the round 22 trade targets and round preview. A bit of a shorter video this week. I didn't think there were that many topics to discuss, and I think with people's trades running out, it's probably a little bit harder to decide which players to bring in, but I think my general kind of feeling is to try and go for the more point of difference, higher upside guys at this point in the season, as that really can help you go up in the rankings. And with all the injuries and suspensions, I think if you have got trades up your sleeve, it's a good tactic in my opinion, just to kind of frog leap the guys who are in front of you if they've got potentially more injury concerns, or if they just don't have any trades at all. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Good luck for round 22. As always, a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.